Fair.
Cool. So I just sent an email from Sincere. First email. We've been working on this for a few months. And now the first thing is already out. No, it feels good.
Yeah.
What they say, it's not buggy, you waited too long.
Yeah. Like
We definitely didn't wait too long.
Well, good. Yeah. I don't know. It's like I've been doing this with my writing, like trying to figure out how to get things out of my head before I'm anywhere near certain of them. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. It's like that's a good actually training for, I think, the bigger stuff. I haven't had to. Well, we're also doing that project together where we're just. I mean, this is like that too, where we're just cobbling things together and getting them out the door and let God decide.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder how it's different talking than like writing to ship something. Because one thing Dave's mentioned before is talking. Sometimes when he gets into flow states with talking, he doesn't know what he's said. Yeah. So we'll be talking and I'll ask him, well, wait, can you go back? What'd you just say? And he's like, I don't remember. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I'm just channeling right now. And I'm like, okay. So there's no censorship there, but then writing or doing other like works, there's a barrier, like the energy's blocked somehow. It's interesting.
Yeah, like being able to do that at the scale of an application or protocol or something. Like, I think that you're doing it as a collective. So there are probably practices that like loosen up everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And then whoever's leading it, same thing. Wow. Thanks. One password. Yeah. I don't know. Haven't got there yet. But the stuff we're playing with right now has the potential for some of that. Like, we're sort of getting on calls with the small group that we're playing with, and then seeing where the calls go, just sort of catching up with each other. Like, it's an ongoing conversation like the one we're having. It's less consistent and across more medias right now. But then there's a point where we start talking about what we're going to work on, or a game to play or something like this.
What we're going to make together. Yeah. I can feel the tension of it too, that everybody wants to talk about it. And then I bring it up and everyone's like, yeah. What kind of game are we going to play next? And I'm like, okay. So, and I don't know if I'm just feeling it personally, where I'm like, I want to know, like, are we going to make something? Because we talk about making things and it's sort of abstract. And I'm like, is it that people are uncomfortable being like, hey, let's do another one? Like, let's do another group post?
Yeah, I don't know what the tension is there.
I don't know either, but I mean, I feel it, and I don't know if it's the group thing, but I just have noticed if I'm like, well, just bring it up, and then everyone gets excited, which is cool. Like, that's a nice feeling. Like, people, I don't know, people want to work together. They want to make things together.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting the dynamic that happens in the collaboration. The style is, it's like it's a peer collaboration. And I haven't been in too many of those since I was really young, and we didn't know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So we're just like, what about this? And what about that? And then like you're feeling your way towards something. And then when something is like resonant, like, like everybody knows, and there's no friction to moving forward along that path. But to get to that place, you need to be in this sort of relaxed, like conversational zone where you're all sharing like a kind of a brain to the degree that you can, like over the medium that you're in. And then, it's interesting that the insecurities that pop up for me are like, well, this is not going to work, or I'm like overstepping, or like they're newer. Some of the newer ones are like, try not to overwhelm the whole fucking thing with your good ideas. Good ideas, quote unquote. Ideas. Or like, don't jump 14 steps ahead and be like, this is what it could be. Like, no one cares. Like, it's just going to derail the thing. So yeah, it's a weird, yeah, it's just relaxing into the present moment with these things and then listening as closely as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm very bad at that. I'm the one, just the one that you just mentioned. I jump way far ahead. And if I don't, then there is no potential in it then, in my mind. That's how I think about it.
Yeah.
And it's such a buzz killer for people around.
Yeah, because the so I've been working on this one like actively. I've noticed it in myself, and every time I do this, the wind comes out of everybody's sails but mine. Unless I'm with somebody who, or if we're playing in the future and like we're doing like a design fiction or something, then that's fine. Like, get as weird as you want, right? But when you're trying to find like a playground, like a small sandbox, like talking about building a battleship is the stupidest fucking thing to do. So
why do you think you lose people? Is it because they can't follow you into the future, or they don't know how to get like from here to there, so they get lost along the way or something?
It's an assumption that they have the same like pathfinding ability or wayfinding ability that you do. And I can walk people there sometimes, and then the number of, this is how I figured this out. I'm like, all right, let me get you there. And then it's like 5 minutes or something and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like, Jesus, that's like 10 years. Because you're compacting. And it's a skill, but like, I remember when we were working on Carbon Made, I had to figure out I could see where the thing was going, like years in advance. And then I'd have to calm myself down and then talk to the people in front of me and then like let them pick up the threads that they are, and it might end up there, but more likely it's going to end up in the place that the team can take it, right? And it may do these weird, who knows? And like, then it became a thing about like, and I didn't really get this optimized or perfected or mastered or anything, but like, if they were like a designer, engineer, something like this, enjoying the work and it was sparking interest, and then there was a feedback loop with customers and users and stuff, that was like, they would open up into these like ideas that there's no possible way I would have found myself going there because of their, and it's just figuring out how to get that into a loop and building the trust in themselves and with the group to be able to continuously move this with constraints. We never got that far. Like the constraints are, in line with whatever the objective of the product is trying to accomplish. I don't know why this is all coming up, but here we are.
Yeah. No, I mean, I always, even the co-founder thing, let alone group building, making something with a group, I've never been successful with that. I did have my very short experiment with it, which was with Eric. He was an engineer in US, and I was a designer, and this is early days of 3 drops, and we would work together. It was more of a 50-50 kind of a thing. I would talk to a client, estimate a project, and then I do the design and he does the engineering. And sometimes the other way around, when it comes to client comes from them. We worked together for a couple of years, and it's fun because there is no salary. We are both in it together. But that also means that motivation sometimes go up and down, and some other things get in between things. So we were never able to grow as fast as sometimes we perhaps needed it, or the potential of some things weren't as clear, and because the other person disagrees, and there you are. there is nothing happening. So I've always been, as soon as I come up with a thing, even I see, all right, there is an opportunity here for partnership. But then I think from the past experience, this is going to be a very, very slow work, and they might lose motivation along the way. And here I am wasting my time. And I mean, of course, there's as well, but I would rather pay hire people for doing things. I've never been able to get something off the ground and work consistently on it as a group and everybody, all kind of co-founders, without the kind of the second layer, which is what most startups have. They go raise money and then they have a bunch of investors above them. If
Yep.
you don't have that and it's only you and other people, I haven't been successful to push it forward, which is why actually which is why I'll not waste so much money. But as soon as I come up with something, I just hire somebody full time on it.
Yep.
But if I was able to work with other people as partners, I think that would be a lot more fun, less risky too.
Yeah. I mean, the risks are I mean, it depends on the goal of the partnership too. Like the goals of the when I never figured out how to like jump the gap into like having it be shared economics, right? Like, so it's easy to have a group of people together who sort of share an ethos or a style of play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the point of games like this are to continue to play the game. Every day you show up, you want to keep going,
Yep.
right? And then leadership in that environment is a lot about proper constraint design, like making sure that the field of play stays tense in the right ways and is relaxed in the right ways. You know, it's this like optimal sort of balance. Money screws that up pretty well. So
How? Because there's something here I feel like with, if you're the one with the money and then you're the one granting the money to people, there's like this built-in hierarchy, and then people start doing this thing where they're like coming to you like, what should I do? And you're like, wow, you know what to do though, but you're the boss. Like that sort of mentality. I'm feeling into that a little bit, and we've talked about this, so I think there's something there.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't feel equal in some way.
Yeah, it's the type of inequality. Like, so I think what's important in these types of relationships is the peer nature of them. Like trying to like manage, like we are coming to get, like you were just talking about with your former partner, you came to the work together, you distributed duties based on interest and based on ability. And, you know, and you'll pick up stuff where you need to, like, I think I can do that. I'll try it. Right. All my early partnerships were like this. And there's this, but if there is a problem with the scarcity in that model where it's not a secure relationship, there's the possibility of it falling apart because of financial reasons or, you know, some other instability. It becomes really hard to manage that. The overhead on managing the partnership becomes like more than it becomes less fruitful. Sometimes it's a decent tension. Like Jason and I were so aligned on the style of working with money. Like we didn't care about making money. We wanted just to make sure that we never had to have a job. And so like, and we saw eye to eye on this all the time. Be like, okay, I can book this much more work and this can come in. And then he's like, I can optimize it to do this. We would do like, there was a symmetry involved there until scale showed up. And then we started diverting because because
you had to bring people in, and then the peer thing showed up again.
Yep.
And you had to hire people. I mean, you talked about this where you had staff, but you didn't want them to be staff per se. You wanted them to be peers, but then, I mean, there's the models that we have right now are mostly in work, specifically these hierarchical, like hire people in. Or you get stuck in this thing where like you swing the other way where everyone's like equal, family, like a co-op or something. who was it? Oh, and she's working for a company right now that does like the totally equal, everyone's equal. So everyone has a voice and a vote at the table. And I was like, wait, hold on. I was like, are you in meetings all the time? And she's like, all the time. And I was like, and everybody's literally voting. She's like, all the time. She's like, it's exhausting because you have to find consensus. So I've heard about this, like I've read about this. There's Frederick Laloux and the, what is it called? The
restructuring organizations, something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. There's like different colors that describe how people are organized. And I think this one's the green one.
Yeah.
And it's sort of historically, this would be the like 60s and 70s, the like sort of like hippie free love movement where, you know, everyone's equal, everything's like hunky-dory sort of thing. But it doesn't work. I think there's not enough tension in the system. There's not enough constraint. Like there's something missing there. So the next level of that is in his color system, teal organizations, where it's more based on living systems, and hierarchy does emerge. It just, you let it naturally emerge, and it depends on the situation. So in some contexts, like if we were working together, Farzad's taking the lead. In other contexts, I'm taking the lead, and you sort of cede control or whatever, you know, the medium is that you're working in, or whatever the like it makes sense. Like if we were going to be designing a piece of software, like I wouldn't take the lead, that's just obvious. But so it's like the shared leadership and shared like work, so there's more flexibility.
You have to be able to talk about this while you're doing it. Like, this is what's happening. I am in this place, and then I see, you know, like you're constantly sort of negotiating and renegotiating things based on a trust bond, right? Yeah. And if you can't talk about that, and if the person is not ready to be open, like in the group about this, you get this slowdown there. You get a clog in the fluidity of interaction or collaboration. So the best place I've seen this is in studio work with other artists. And we all have different skills, you know, like maybe I'm a better photographer, and you know, somebody else is a good illustrator or copywriter or something like this, and a project shows up, and you immediately just sort of shift into, and some of those gaps can be insane. Like somebody has been, you know, doing photography for 20 years, but they've just started an illustration practice. So there's like this, you know, developmental, like there are developmental lines on each skill that you produce, right? And you can be a young illustrator and a mature photographer, you know, and you have to switch your roles when you're doing being in this environment. Somebody else is going to be leading you, even though you're an expert in something, right?
Yep.
So learning how to do these transitions in a peer group is one of the harder things to do if you've come from an authoritative hierarchy system, because you're used to being in charge. But the glory of the thing of being able to be new at something, and like openly new, it's fucking great. Like you can just go fuck things up. You don't know what's going on. Like, you know, somebody can help you. You get to, you're like, you get all the cool things when you learn them, you know, that's part of the joy of being alive. So, yeah.
You share the responsibility too, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes hard if you're the only one that is like responsible like that. There's a big weight to that.
Yeah.
But it's easier to sort of bear that burden. I've been talking about burden a lot lately, and I don't know if it's the right word, because I'm not afraid, but burden feels negative in my mind. Because there's burdens in life, I guess, just the sheer like being alive, like there's challenges in being human. And if you share that with people, it makes it easier. And it's not bad though. It's not a bad thing. So I don't know if the word burden is just inherently negative, or if there's another word here. It's not easy always to do things. It's on your own, but it can be easier if you do it with people, depending on what, I mean, anything worth doing, anything big enough, you have to do it with people. Yeah. Otherwise you just can't hold the shape of it.
I think voting thing is the group cannot take the responsibility for it. That's where It's kind of difficult for me
Hmm.
to follow. The other one is the idea of rotating CEO.
Yeah.
That's more like it. There is a direct relationship between the decisions that you are making and the consequences of them.
Yeah.
And you can actually point. And I like, because before I was all for, we were always about 5-6 people. And then I would always seek for advice from just my own team. And then we would vote for things. And if somebody actually, we see that the votes are negative and it should, people of experience on the matter believe that it should be a yes. So now we are trying to explain ourselves as clearly as possible to see if we can move them over. And if not, it's still, the group never takes the blame, because at the end, as a founder, you are taking the hit of these wrong decisions. But CEO, well, I like that you can actually point and go, that was a wrong decision, and that's the lessons that needs to be learned.
That's the
Rather than,
mindset.
all right, the group needs to learn this.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead, please.
So that CEO mindset, that orientation towards learning from mistake and failure as like a positive byproduct, rather than like we fucked up, somebody's got to be in trouble for it or whatever the hell. If you can embed that at whatever level, like there are different stylistic versions of this, right? There are some that are very like, warrior like, and there are others that are softer, like, oh, I've learned this about myself, and I'm coming into myself in a bigger, softer picture, this kind of thing. So all along that spectrum, there are ways though to care about reality as it stands, as it is, as you are interacting with it. And the idea then becomes implicit that like there are things and blockages or clogs or however you want to see them that are obscuring your view, right? Veils and blind spots, and whatever metaphor or analogy works for the person. And if you can remove these, then you are much more open to the ability to interact with other people. You can listen better because you're not blocked by a pattern of behavior that's running in your head all the time. Like when somebody is saying something, it turns on and it's just noise, and you can't hear what is being said, the underlying intention or question or whatever is there, right? So if you can take that CEO-ish mindset and then have a group of people who work in this way as peers, then everybody is striving towards a reality, right? Like to be more in alignment with reality. And if you can then talk about it, again, this requires, it requires, it may not be possible at scale immediately, right? But this is the kind of thing that Zappos and these other companies were trying to embed, right? So that what you get is a workforce or people that you're working for who have decision-making power and trust in themselves to do the right thing for whatever overarching mission there is. And it's sloppier until it clicks. And then you get crazy emergent things. It becomes like wildly efficient, I think. How this works at scale, and there's like some examples of these companies, like typically in more socialist leaning countries. But yeah, anyways, there has to be some like stylistic gradient between completely hierarchical and the buck stops with one person and something that's more dispersed. I don't have answers for this, but I can see the pattern of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I've got like tons of thoughts here. I don't even know where to like start.
At the beginning.
So there's like one thing with understanding, so empathy, being able to take other people's perspectives, and you can't really do that unless you've had the experience yourself. So that's one thing. And then, which I think I can come back to, so there's ways to operationalize that. Maybe I'll just start there. I don't know if I read about this in a book or if I've seen it in other places, but my experience working under Brian Burwell in health consulting and like health policy work and working with big governments and other like big scale endeavors, is he operated in this way where you had a group of people, it was like a talent pool, and people played different roles on different projects and you self-selected in. So you would opt in based on what your expertise was.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'd be leading it, sometimes you wouldn't. Sometimes you'd be doing like more of like a project management type role, sometimes more analysis, more research. It kind of depended. And that gave you the benefit of understanding when you weren't in the leadership role or you weren't in the project management role, what that person was going through.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't sort of brush aside whatever their task was or whatever the challenge was at hand. You had like a more holistic picture of whatever you were working like in the problem space, because tensions start running high when you're on deadlines and you're like trying to figure out these like bigger problems, and you've got clients that want something. So I think there's something there with having rotating roles, like note taking sometimes. Like I feel like I don't know why I'm blanking on this, because it might have been something I read, but I have like a felt experience with it. So there's something there, and it's along all like levels too. So I don't know how this would work. I mean, it can work with something as easy as note taking, but as far as taking responsibility for major decisions, where you and I have talked about this, Dave, CEOs and people who understand the full picture, not everyone can get there. So how do you help other people understand that what that person is doing? And then you get this other thing too, where CEOs are often treated as basically like gods.
Yeah.
People don't understand them. They sort of worship them. They think that they're other. So this is where I never understood that. And I would treat CEOs, who are usually men that I've experienced, just like normal people. And they couldn't get enough of it. They're just like thought that I was the most novel thing. Like, look at her, she just walks in and talks to me like a person. I'm like, well, aren't you a person? Like, so that sort of, there's a separation oftentimes between roles that if you blur it a little bit more, but also have respect based on what's going on. Like there was never a lack of respect for what these people were doing in leadership positions, because it's a lot of responsibility. Yeah, I don't know. There's something in there.
Blur the titles. That's nice.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to know that it's, again, the shared responsibility thing. If you're the CEO and you know that your people have your back because they understand, what your role is, but you also understand what their role is, and you can talk to each other about what's going on, and there's transparency is definitely a thing in here. Because if you don't understand what's happening in the system, or people are withholding information, that doesn't really work. But if you have a felt sense that, I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but like, we're in this together, like we are doing something together. If we fail, I mean, and that's part of it. And I did want to touch on this. If you do fail, if there is like something that falls apart, oftentimes what happens is there's this sort of like waterfall experience of it, where if the CEO is the one that's really bearing the brunt of it, he passes a little bit of like that brunt down. Like whoever's next in line passes a little bit of that down, and it sort of trickles down. And most people on the front lines, then they don't give a shit about what's going on with like the business side of it. Cause they're like, it's not my problem, but it is your problem. And because we're all working together, aren't we? And most companies don't do this. And this, for me personally, was super frustrating working in, for example, a health insurance company, where aren't we all working to help coordinate care for these people that we're serving? Isn't that the whole premise? I mean, in theory it is, but in practice it's not. And then you run into this like totally, everyone's just working in silos basically. And the like analogy Dave uses is throwing messages over the fence. Like there's no real collaboration. So there feels like there's separation, and then everyone's got their own reasons for doing it. And oftentimes the frontline workers are the ones taking care of people, and they're like actually literally in people's homes and talking to them and working through their health conditions. And then the people that are doing other aspects of the job are just like, yeah, they're not my problem. They are your problem. Or the money thing, oh, that's not my problem. It's all related. It's all related.
Yeah, you got definitional.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of stuff in there. Yeah.
The layers, like with well, not to name anything. Big companies, I think I was just thinking to say, all right, leadership, that's their probably something to get better at, just completely kind of diving into the why and then explaining it as simply as possible. So for all of these layers to understand it. But then I'm thinking now it's actually the managers messing it all up. It's not the leadership. The layer between the people that are actually doing the work and them the managing them, and then the leadership, the misconnections happen usually in the layer between, where they usually try to paint the whole another picture of what's actually going on with the people doing the actual work, just to make themselves kind of seen good by the boss.
Yep.
And that creates this misalignment between the two important layer of the company. So if you actually remove the managers, you actually build a company that doesn't necessarily need them. There is a transparency in how you are kind of communicating your progress, and that can be visualized very quickly at a kind of you don't need to dive into the detail of what everybody in detail working on, but everything is aligned, things are moving towards the right direction. And if not, it's transparent enough for everybody to see it.
Yeah.
So managers are no longer need to lie about progress as they usually do. And that's usually the problem, because leadership never actually go down to the all the way down to the people that are actually doing the work, and they are the ones that are actually moving the company forward. They envision a plan, but they're doing it, but then the managers lie about the progress that is being made because they don't want to get blamed for it.
Yeah. Well, then you get a separation of experience of what's going on, because the people who are doing the work then are sort of separated from this like larger vision or direction setting, because they're doing something and then they're not really, it's sort of black box. You don't really know what your performance means or how it's being contextualized, if it's being taken by someone and summarized in a certain way that you don't ever get to see it. And then if leadership is taking that information and doing XYZ with it and it's not accurate, then yeah, there's no circuit there. It's not.
It's an organizational blind spot. The same thing we're talking about at the individual level. So there's a fractal here. The way that the people in an organization operate, like with their internal and external communication methodology, like what do you value as far as again, reality and truth, and these sort of like, do you value removal of blind spots? And that if you do, this is a hard thing to do, though. It's emotional, it's difficult, it requires space and vulnerability and trust, right? And so if you don't have any of those things in your organization, you have a warlike atmosphere, and people are constantly like propping up like sort of negative traits based on insecurity, and the insecurity can come from wherever at whatever level. And so you end up with this sort of giant blind spots in the organization because information flow is clogged, right? And also with a hierarchical system, you have a point up top that is dispersing information down and out, right? And the bottom has the most on the ground information, but it has to filter. So you get this tiny amount of information up top that is then being filtered out based on, abstractions or something. So it can work for certain types of problems, but not all problems, and usually not for very creative or innovative environments, right? Like, early day startups, there's just people doing the things that need to be done, right? So I think that there is a way to engender a culture that looks to like a personal responsibility type of thing, right? Like responsibility is something that you aspire to, right? But it's something that you need to build yourself up to with the help of others around you. is not something that you take. I've tried to take more responsibility than was necessary, and that's where it becomes a burden, becomes heavy, overly heavy,
because it's not yours to take, right?
Yeah, if you're in
It's
shape,
shared,
yeah, if you're trained and you're in shape, a weight is not that heavy. It is heavy in a different way, right? It can be a useful friction to work out with. If you are not in shape and you try to pick something up, you will throw your back out. So like this is, and so if you can engender this in the culture, like you are trying to get in better shape, and the weights that you're working out with are responsibility. Like there's a possibility that you can build an organization that trains together, and the byproduct of this thing is, trust and all these other, and clearer vision across the organization. Yeah, and then you don't need middlemen. They're not necessary. Like I go talk to you because you're my peer, right? And it doesn't matter what level you're at.
This is where things fell apart with the group that Brian oversaw, because when we were bought by IBM is all about hierarchy and managing the bottom line, which I understand they're a big corporation, but the way we worked just didn't make sense to what they were doing. So maximizing, like there was all kinds of requirements for these like middle level management type roles of like reporting structures, and then you'd get these like division chiefs that would like come like rain from on high with these overarching, like this is what's happening now, and you'd hear like rumblings through the pipeline too. We're going to have to work more, we're going to have to do XYZ, and everyone's like, it's not possible. Can they not listen to what we are saying about what the experience is of doing this kind of work? And they're like, just work more. And we're like, we are not a product, we are people. Like the product is us, and people pay an exorbitant amount of money for it. You can't duplicate us.
Yeah.
You can maybe go find people and grow the team, but they just wanted to cut people. It was like, how does this make sense? So yeah, that the information, like the way it's getting lost too, there's so much like seepage, like the information flows up, and then you get managers. I mean, I've been in this position where you are managing what information to share with whom, and it's coming from like above you, below you, sideways, and then you're just like, okay, and you're constantly, so if you're not good with that and good with people, so it's all about networking. It's gossipy as hell too. Like it's fun in a way, but it's like pretty immature. Like it's weird because it's this abstracted management of people, and it's very odd. I don't like it. I did at the time. It was kind of fun. This is when I met him, and he's like, what are you doing here? Like, you shouldn't be working in a place like this. Because I was frustrated too, because that's not work. Like, we're not doing the work. Like, I spent so much of my time managing like the flow of information and resources, and I also had things to do. Like I needed to like actually like work, like do like I don't know, whatever it was, and that was hard. I had another thought, but I think I lost it. Dave was talking about shared responsibility. Oh, go ahead.
It'll come back if it wants to.
Yeah. No, this stuff is really interesting. It keeps coming up too. You don't need managers. People can manage themselves. Open communication. Yeah, I guess one of the things I'm like slightly obsessed with right now, just the last few days, is the concept of subsidiarity, where things don't need to grow bigger than they need to be, is like sort of in a nutshell. So you only grow it to the size that like it needs to be. So like that concept. So I started like researching this online, and all of this market-based capitalism stuff comes back about like how to grow, how to like break through that barrier. And then I'm just like, no, this is not what I want. It's like the opposite of that. Like, how do you not necessarily slow growth, but how do you grow to an appropriate size? And what is an appropriate size that is not just the sort of measurement is how fast and how high you can grow. So sort of getting into that. And I think that biological systems, again, are a good measure of this because there's built-in constraints. It happens naturally. Like there's no setting out like with like a specific intent. It's just, it's based on environment and relationship to other things. And that's how big and how fast it can grow. It can't go any faster. It could go slower if something gets in the way, but you know, like, so I think there's something to learn here. And it's interesting to think about. So the reason it came up, I was reading an article about Patagonia and their eco-sustainability, and they're pretty responsible for a corporation. They're a public benefit corporation, so they have requirements legally that go beyond just maximizing profit. They also look into like supply chain and where things are coming from and their carbon footprint, blah, blah, blah. But they're a huge, huge, huge company. And I'm thinking to myself, do they need to be this big to do what they're doing? Is this the best structure for it? Do you need to be playing at that scale to solve some of the world's sustainability and eco problems? I don't have an answer to that, but it just strikes me as being that big and having like one player basically in the corporate space that's leading that. Does that make sense? Or does it make sense to have smaller, different groups experimenting with different things and sharing information about what they're finding? I don't know, but yeah.
It always seemed kind of obvious from outside maybe, but from inside, most people are clueless about what they should measure that kind of indicates growth. It doesn't need to be number of employees or revenue. It's just, it can be something, whatever it is that the purpose of the company was. Let's just measure that as a growth rate, but everybody needs one. Yeah, I think for SaaS companies, it's usually as long as you are growing, you are growing. Jason from Basecamp talks a lot about this. Like, we don't need to become that big. We don't need to know the valuation of our company. As long as we have, we are running a healthy, profitable company and working with people that we like, then job accomplished. But I guess they are, measuring something and we don't know what that is.
Yeah,
But finding that thing is very difficult.
We talked a little bit about this, like, could it be personal growth or like personal development or group development? So there's like a more qualitative, did we talk about this as a group?
No.
The three of us? Yeah. Well, Dave and I have talked about this a bit. Some sort of qualitative measure of whatever it might be. I mean, you could do quality of life or something, satisfaction. There's all kinds of measures. We got into this a little bit, like, because you need to be able to show change over time. And then, I mean, I've done this as a qualitative researcher in healthcare space, but there's simple ways of just measuring snapshot in time. What is your experience now, and then at this point, and then this point, and then this. So, and you can get nuanced with the instrumentation that you have, but it's a totally different thing than quantitative. It's less scientific, but there is room. So one of the best measures of health is a simple question. I forget the exact phrasing, but it's been researched and studied, and it's pretty statistically, I don't know, not statistically significant, but accurate, with asking people, how would you rate your health? And it's basically a scale of like poor, fair, poor, whatever the scale is. And people pretty reliably rate their health in alignment with what scientists or like doctors will rate their health, because they're the ones living in their bodies. If they don't feel pressured to answer in one way or the other, they're going to think about it. Yeah, I feel pretty good, or I feel really good. They're an authoritative
source.
They know what they feel. Yeah.
So if you can get your measurement oriented in this kind of way, right? And then you have this thing where you're growing towards responsibility or towards, whatever it is, flourishing as an individual within a collective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get different measures of the health of the organization and what that organization can do potentially. Like, if it's in alignment to go make a fuckload of money, it will, because that's what the sort of ethos of the thing requires. But if it is to remain steady state or move into an R&D phase or whatever it is, like, you can also have break-offs and like then but they're still connected to the main organization through relationship, right? This is where having permeable barriers legally, like this is where all the crypto stuff and these like smart contracts can potentially play a role,
More
where
flexibility.
you're not having to write everything down on paper with fucking quills with lawyers, right? Like you can collapse some of that work. It's still necessary. It's still, you need binding agents and stuff. But these labs can potentially, the reason that this comes to mind is because you are now operating so many different types of organization that require different styles of leadership and interaction. Like some of them are going to be more playful, some of them are going to be more hierarchical, some of them are going to interface with larger scale organizations that the legibility on what you're doing internally won't make any sense to them, but you need translations, you know? Like this is the role that I played a lot in client relationships. I could take your organizational model and what you valued and then interpolate it in real time to see if my organization could then produce what you needed, or whatever the transaction or trade was going to be. So, but being able, I think that one of the things that are super necessary in this are communication systems that work in like a sort of adaptability models, right? Like based on these relational like interactions, rather than these hierarchical toss shit over the fence and then hope that something fucking happens, right? Like, but you do need this ethos somewhere in the culture that drives these behaviors, like habituation things. Like we are people that do this kind of thing all the time, and this kind of thing produces the type of person that like wishes to take on responsibility, you know, and is emboldened and is made whole by these types of things. So that's very vague, but there's the logical pattern, I guess.
By the way, what a broken system it is to measure health by just asking somebody how would you rate your health? What a big question. Like if you even ask me how, because I answer those questions a lot, and especially therapy ones. How happy are you 1 to 10? And you go, well, that it's like it's very current state of mind. We are very, very poor with remembering 10 minutes ago how we felt. I feel what I feel now, and I have no idea what I felt before. So there is a consistency of just asking yourself the same questions, probably repeatedly, during kind of high points of your waking time to understand, all right, overall, that's how I'm feeling. You cannot just give it a, I was talking to, there is this back pain product that, and I was talking to its designer, and the biggest challenge they had was just very much this one. How much pain, but how much back pain do you have, 1 to 10? And then they would suggest guides or, you know, things that you could try at home based on the thing that you just answered. And they were trying to come up with something to replace it with. But then again, for some reason, everybody is just stuck at this very level. Nobody have found a better way of understanding how people feel without them rating on things. I do it repeatedly. Whenever I ask an opinion of something from somebody, I just go 1 to 10. How do you feel about this? And that's how you get a very instant feedback on how things operate in their mind.
There's another thing I've noticed with pain, specifically pain rating, that they give you, and sometimes in therapy, the little faces, like the emojis, like what does it feel like? And you're like, that one, it feels like that one, which is kind of funny. Like, and I think there is research about emojis giving people like expression. So there's something interesting there with like the symbology of, I feel like that. And it's kind of like a mini mental mindfulness thing. Just take one little step back. How are you feeling? And you have to think about it a minute. And if you're going to pick a little picture, you have to think about which one feels like it aligns with me, which is remarkable. And that probably makes people feel good too. Even if they don't feel great, they're like, well, I know what I feel, and I feel that. At least I know where I stand.
I think, I don't know if it's right or not, but I think most people don't know how they feel.
No, they don't stop to think about it, I think. So
well, there's no time to do that.
So the biggest job of a doctor, it has been delegated to the patients.
Oh yeah.
Do a bunch of stuff, then you let me know how I feel. I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm feeling is correct or not.
Yeah.
Or so whenever I go, and I found it very, frustrating with therapy, because as soon as I go there, well, I had a good walk right before I go to the
Yep,
session.
yep,
So
yep.
how do you feel? I feel pretty good actually.
Yeah.
But then I would go home, I don't actually feel good.
Yeah.
Why I didn't talk about all of these other things that I wanted to talk about?
Yep. Yeah.
Don't ask me, questions like that. Ask me specific questions. I answer them. Then you rate it yourself with your knowledge and experience that you have. You went to school to know what's okay and what's not okay. Then you can tell me 1 to 10, where am I?
I guess part of the practice is they're trying to teach you how to do that for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like in some ways, but
The mechanisms.
part of that has to be reflection, where it's like, doesn't seem like you're doing so good. Or like Dave's therapist because he told her, I'm gonna lie because I like to lie to see if I can get away with things. So she kept, how are you doing? Whatever, try to feel things out. And then he would respond, are you lying right now? And then they could get into it deeper. And then over time, I think she got better at being like, it seems like this is going on. Because oftentimes you can't see it and you're just like, oh.
Well, you have to. So my experience with this is, well, that one is a good example of a fractal. Like the first step in stopping bullshitting yourself is to admit that you bullshit yourself all the time. And then the therapeutic relationship is there as a partnership. Like, I want to get into the fucking weeds here. And I need you to help me when I start spinning out because I don't know what the fuck is going on. Right. I didn't know how to express this. The only way I could is like, I can see the problem. It's that I lie all the time. I bullshit because marketing is good. You can learn to bullshit. And I don't want to do that anymore, but I don't know how. Right. Because when you live in that state constantly, where you're selling the future and you don't know if you can make it and all these kinds of things, you start to attract other people who are good at this. You're surrounded by people who are constantly doing this and you have no idea what to trust, because half the time, more than half the time, if you're talented at this, you can pull it off. But when it fucking doesn't work, things crack and crumble and stuff. So yeah, it's so for on the health thing, I hated this. Like I hate doctors for this reason. Like I don't like the medical profession in general. I appreciate the skill in certain things, and if I needed something cut out of me or whatever, I would hope that somebody who has a lot of skill at this and understands it would do it, right? But generally, I'm going to stay away from it as much as possible. But if you're going to do this, then you have to work on your health. Then you have to take an active role in understanding how the body works and how, or at least, this is true of mental health too. This is very independent minded and most people don't have the resources or time to do this, but I did. So here we are. And what I've come to is some of these movement practices like Qigong have it built in this sort of mindfulness of the body. Like you are doing balancing things and movement things that take you internally, and then you're paying attention, right? And the more you do this, the more that, and I also did physical training, with a sports coach, these kinds of things. It brings you back into your body, and then your sensors come back online, right? Like, oh, I'm feeling this, and oh, my leg hurts in this way, and oh, because your proprioception, the resolution on what is happening internally. The thing is, though, you have to carve out time for this. And you have to let nothing else in that time. This is the time that I am having a discussion with my body physically. And then I have the same thing with journaling, where I'm having a discussion with my mental processes and my internal personas to understand what the dialogue is like in there, right? And you combine these kinds of things and you'll start having a sense of what it's like to be inside you, right? Within the form that you've gotten downloaded into, that there something. Anyways, it does make a huge difference. I don't know if my gallbladder hurts or something. I don't have that level of detail, but
imagine if we did, it would be horrible.
I'm sure some people do.
You're like, my liver right now is just off by 10%.
Yeah. See, you can over
So
index.
this is the challenge with doctors is they're giving you this like they're telling you this like quantitative like readout and stuff and you're like what does that mean though? And they're not going to help you figure it out. They're just like and then they put the onus on you. You need to make a decision based on this, like the life or death stuff. Well, you have to decide and you're like how? Like
yeah, it's a fractured model. I think those two models need to come together.
Yeah.
You have the objective like measure of the body and its like chemical composition and its flows and all that stuff. And then you also have some practice that the individual is doing over time to have a conversation with their body. And snapshots don't do it.
Yep.
Like, so if you don't have that conversation with your body and you go into the hospital and they're like, how are you feeling? And you're like, what? I don't fucking know. But if you're over time taking measurements and having like looking, you know, you can start to build a picture of kind of where you're at in relation to where you were before. And it is relative, right? It's relational.
Farzad, you were going to say something.
Yeah.
I lost one. Just the senses part was very interesting for me. Body time, mind time.
Yeah.
And result of it, all of your senses come to life. And I don't know. It's gone. But I like the focus meditation. That's the only thing that kind of brings me back to my senses. And then I realized, oh my God, like I haven't felt, that was a big thing for me. When I went through kind of I don't know, depression, deep rest, whatever that is. My therapist used to give me some stuff to smell. Do you smell this? I'm like, no, I don't have that sense. And it hit me that actually I had no sense of taste or smell for a very long time.
Really interesting.
It's crazy to me until I started taking pills for kind of dopamine, serotonin. They were imbalanced, so I started taking this very, very high dosage of pills, which is very, very addictive. But as soon as you take it, you come back to life. So you start feeling all of your senses, and what a vibrant feeling it is to giving to somebody who hasn't felt them for a while.
You come out of
and then once it's crazy. I could drink water and I'm like, this is amazing. This water tastes, I can taste the water. But and then after you stop taking the medications, and I need somebody to replace this feeling with. Then you go meditation after a very long journey of being very upset about everything because they took away your happiness pill.
It's really good.
Meditation, focus on your senses and how remarkable it is to actually feel. And this is what I was going to say. As a person who has PTSD, I don't know, Dave, if you have it or not, but I could at times feel my heartbeats, and it's very, very clear. I could actually say what my heart rate is. I don't feel it anymore, but I used to. So I could actually say, all right, my heart, without feeling anything. I could just sit like this and I hear my heartbeat. And I could actually say what my heart rate is. And that goes everywhere. I could say my body temperature changed. What a weird thing to say, by the way. My body temperature just changed now because I'm feeling all weird. Or you are so alert on a not a good way, and then you learn to what the good way is, and then all of this is for you to figure out. But then you get the kind of a breadcrumbs from the therapist usually. I should probably get one again. It's really good to talk to somebody, but I should make a time to have kind of conversations with myself, as you put it. It's very interesting. But I'm also very keen to, you've been experimenting with group note taking and then ponder, and what was the result of that?
The whole thing.
Oh,
the whole
group
thing.
note taking, like group making.
Group note taking, yeah. It's so cool concept.
Well, there's like a fractal here. There's an emergent quality in if you take time to talk with yourself through writing, you take time to talk to yourself through movement practices. You take time to eat well, like this kind of stuff you're doing individually. Once you start noticing all of these things, there's an emergent experience of being that is probably what enlightenment is, right? There's like a taste of it because everything sort of comes together and you're like, oh, all of these things are what I am, right? So the same thing happens with groups. You get a bunch of people together and there's an emergent quality of what we are as the collective, and it has a voice with multiple personas kind of, and but it feels like something. So we did one project with Ponder called Hunkered Down, and it was right when quarantine started with COVID. So everyone was having a shared experience, but it was all very like everyone's having their own unique shared experience because, you know, someone's in Bangkok, someone's in Oakland, someone's in Maine. I mean, lots of different places. So Dave and I came up with prompts, and every day for 2 weeks, basically respond to this prompt. Some of them are about different senses like smells and sound and like what felt different. Some of them are more emotional. What does it feel like with, you know, the new information with COVID? We spent quite a bit of time crafting the prompts too, which were fun. Like it was like a little game. It was a word game. And then people would use Ponder to submit their entries basically, and you could just watch them coming in with a feed. And we got over 100 different entries, and we made a little zine. I'll share it with you, Farzad. It was pretty cool. It felt like there was a unique voice of the group, that we were doing something separately but together, and you got these little perspectives, and people liked the opportunity to be vulnerable. This was some feedback that we got with people. Some didn't know anybody except for Dave or me, so they're joining, and it was a small group, just like 12 people, I think. But yeah, you're sharing a little intimate, like it's like journaling basically with a group. So I think there's a lot of different things I could share with you. We did a little bit of qualitative research on it as well. Like, what was your experience? Why did you come do this? What did you like about it? You know, would you do something else like this again? That kind of thing.
Yeah, the place it's going now. So I think the model is extremely useful. I think that small groups of people in, you know, probably like 6 to 12, maybe a little bit bigger than that, like working together extremely closely and sort of sharing what's going on internally, what they're researching externally, you know, like in a media environment where it's easy to sort of move through this media, like take it in, filter it in the ways that you want to understand what's going on. Like having a group of like operators, for instance, being in one of these environments where there's an enormous amount of information coming in, and there are different styles of sort of information flow, and like some are over time, right? Like you want to say, for instance, like you're making daily notes, right? And this stuff is just channeling, right? Like, and it's in a feed, and most people are not going to want to see that. But if we're working together and I'm also doing this, if we can check in with our notes, you might be able to see something in my thinking before I can see it, right? And vice versa. And so if there's an enclosed environment where the vulnerability of that is fine, right? There's an upside to it. And then you go up in higher levels of like we're doing it now. We're recording this thing, and then we can offer it to other people to watch, and then they can start to understand our patterns of conversation, the kinds of things that we're interested in. They are following along with the conversation without having to be present. And so there's a bunch of asynchronous things that you can do with this. It is also based on games and habits. So like there are cyclical things like, we're talking about like doing journal reviews, like sharing little bits and pieces of our personal journals, like on a weekly basis, just to get that like habituation. And it doesn't matter what the content is yet, right? You're just training it. You're training the idea that you're sharing things that are not polished, that are just off the cuff, that may be interesting in ways that you can't understand, but the group might understand, right? So, but you're still, yeah, I don't know. So there's some of these things. Then there are individual games where you take like we're doing one this week where we take a piece of media and we all individually write about it, like our reflections within a word count limit. And then we come back together in a conversation synchronously and we talk about what we all felt about this specific like article, piece of media, whatever it is. And then you get a sort of holographic view based on the interactions and tensions within the group. You're doing collective like sense making, right? So as a body, one of these organizations can sense into the world a lot more efficiently than an individual or somebody who is like doing a competitive posting to get the most likes or some bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. What you're doing is working together to understand things in like a fluid way, and there will be natural paths. And then the build process here is to have an organizational, a build mentality that when you have a path, you can build onto it. Like rather than having a built structure that you have to operate in, just keep it lo-fi, let everybody build the things that they need to build and let it organize in the way that it makes sense. And if later some of those paths are reoccurring cow paths, then just build something fancy. Like this is a good way to grow applications naturally and then encode them once you already have the natural paths that people want to do, and keep it adaptable, because this stuff is shifting all the time, because the world is shifting all the time. And the technology is the cycles are getting fast enough that you can kind of respond and build at the same time if you keep it lo-fi and not polished. Fuck polish. Polish is death. But
especially for designers.
Yeah. That's where we're at, kind of.
I mean, that's where something lives. This whole group note taking, and then we have how I've been thinking about the social media for the past few days, just because now I'm kind of, once you kind of detaching yourself from all of the things that you've created, then you just end up with yourself, and all right, I need to build my own brand, my own personal brand. Who am I? What am I? What's and then which platforms I'm going to use, and then all of the social network is very much like based. So whatever that doesn't, and then it's very, very difficult to get people's attention nowadays because of just how much content and good content out there is. But then you're just very curious about how people around you are living, people that you know, being connected to them somehow. And if we say Twitter is for people that are for work people, and then Facebook should be the place where we go see what's up with the friends and family, it still doesn't serve that purpose because of the destruction that like concept brought to all of these platforms. So it's not a social app, but it's more of a note-taking app. I miss Path. Was it called Path?
Yeah.
What is
it? That was good.
Yeah, it was too good. It didn't like, how are they going to make money on it?
Farzad, what's Path?
Path was social app. Let me see. Is if it's you
Danny
could.
Trin was the designer on it, I think.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's a very small group that you can invite, as far as I remember it. So it's like you need to actually invite people to your feed, and then they would see what you're listening to, what you are watching, thought, ideas, anything like that. I can actually find screenshots.
It was beautiful.
So it doesn't exist anymore.
No.
It doesn't exist, but it was very, very fun to use with people that you are close to and you want to understand how their lives are going. And I think it's something like that for now, especially during the COVID and people are far away from each other, would be very suitable, because it's not everybody is moving towards newsletters and social networks. This is a place where you are keeping tab on your close friends and family by just not having them writing stuff that would gain them likes, but more of a here's a status update. Just a lack of status updates in current social media tools are just very sad.
Yeah, one of the things that my family started spontaneously doing with Ponder was, yeah, it had the
Yeah.
little wheel thing.
It's just a simple app. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was premised on closed network. It was
Yeah.
smaller networks. It's like if you had, like, we have a group chat on Telegram, you have a group on Path.
Yeah, but you couldn't have more than one. So you would just invite your close friends and family to it. There are some constraints to make this a very safe place for you to share
Interesting. Yeah.
whatever that is going on in your life. And here you're not doing things for the likes of it. Here you are just sharing. And it's very, for whatever reason, it was very homey like.
Yeah. We like our sort of premise behind Ponder was similar to that, but you could have more than one.
Yeah.
And we wanted to,
Yeah.
we did want to build into the model a publishing aspect because we do think that part of growth comes from sharing what you are experiencing as a group and individual. Like, it's all sort of encapsulated with other people so that you can find other people that can connect in some way, or even point out, oh, this made me think about this, or you were writing about this, but me and my group were writing about that, and it seems like there's a gap here, or so, whatever. Like, it's the whole
Yeah.
find the others thing.
I mean, it's like how science is supposed to work. You know, you're doing research and then you're publishing it, and then other people can see it and they can take from the research and do their own. And, you know, there's a reciprocal process here, right? Yeah, I mean, the closed group thing, like, oh yeah, my family. So yeah, my dad started just sort of creating prompts and then writing from them about family history stuff, right? And
Super cool.
like, he would then work with my mom to create a post or whatever, and
which was really funny.
Yeah, like that they're co-posting things, like, so they're co-authoring stuff, and you know, then my family can, like, the siblings can sort of jump in and talk about their like view of what happened during that, if it was something in our lifetime, you know. And so you're getting this sort of view, and this is what you do if you're all together in the same place, and you get to talking, and this is right. But people don't live like that anymore. We're all spread out, right? Like, we're all over the country in the United States, and then some people are global, right? Like in your case. So like, what is the orientation point here? And like, having it mediated through text and stuff, it's like, you're like, it's all chopped up and like transactional everywhere else. But here, my dad wrote this long post, and then he gets to present it to the audience that will care about it, right? And then I get high quality information that I never knew about to learn about myself and where I've come from, right? And this feedback loop, I mean, talk about something that is like just delicious. You're just like, holy shit, it opens up how you see the world because you are getting this, you know. And there's also the lower end version. This is a simple thing. You could have a game, and then families could do this all over the place, right? Like, and then that thing is extraordinarily precious. It is this narrative view of your lineage, effectively, right? And if this becomes a practice over time, like, you just start, you're collecting these things. This is what Facebook is doing now, but it's privately held. So if you could do this and have this as you know, some family resource or something that is passed down in some way, that it's in, you know. Anyways, this is the direction that I could see a product like this. This will show up somewhere, like, you know, because it's such a good thing to have. We were thinking about this in terms of, sorry, I'm going to hit you in the face.
I'm waiting for it. It's like quite the experience being next to Dave's hand gestures. Yeah. I'm like in the line of fire.
Yeah. You could do this with properties too. Like, somebody has the property, they take pictures, they show what they've done, they've upgraded it, they made the bathroom used to look like this. This is where a wall used to be. Like, you take pictures of the thing, then you hand it off as the thing as you sell the building, and
I'm obsessed with this. Like,
this is also legally, you get all this information or whatever. This is what NFTs are.
Legally. Yeah.
NFT.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this makes the case for using blockchain in a way to sort of collapse the distance between digital and analog, because you can share this information, you can see lineage, you can see relationships. The property thing is like, there's a great use case here. Someone's building
Yeah.
this right now. Guarantee it. Like there's no way
Yeah.
that we're out ahead on this one.
No.
Because it's like, we don't work in real estate. Like some crazy digital real estate person is like,
Yeah.
they've got a prototype. It's closed, but I'd love to meet them. I'd like to see, but I mean, 100% it's a market driven thing though. So sick of the market. That's a whole other.
I just love how tech people like us overcomplicate things. Like even if we make a very simple solution for people to use it as a kind of a private Tumblr,
Yeah.
Yep.
or whatever, like a very, very simple tool, it would still be used by people because people now have the time. They are all in quarantine somewhere. And blockchain for some reason always gets in. But yeah, this property thing though.
I don't know if we need blockchain for the Tumblr thing. I mean,
No.
I'd have to think about this. There's probably ways of like linking things up, but one of the things about blockchain that's nice, and this is an interesting lens to put on, or maybe NFTs in more specifically, is you get into lineage. So it's like relationship over time with something becomes important. And that sort of lesson for people right now, I think, is important because people seem to be a little bit overly fixated with how can I get the thing I need right now or want right now, without regard to, well, where the hell did this thing come from? How was it made? Or what is the impact on getting it to me right now? Who brought it to me? What is it made of? Like all of these things. And then, down the road, like thinking about generations ahead, because the speed with which we are consuming the Earth's resources, like that is sort of, it's finite, and we're kind of hitting the extremes there. And people, I don't think, are understanding what that means. So if there's mental models, and I do think blockchain and NFTs can help teach people that, I mean, we're ways off, but I like that it's built into that model. I think it makes sense. And there's an aspect to it that is not just technical or digital. It's more felt to being alive and understanding that there's things like, I don't know, time, relationship over time. There's something there that gets me excited. I'm like, oh, there's something there. I don't know exactly how it will look or feel, but I think it's important. And I think it's goes beyond just the tech side of it. But yeah, overcomplicating it. I mean, this is why we have the stupid NFT art thing right now, which I shouldn't say it's stupid. It's just, it's a little, it's a media stunt right now.
Yeah.
It's a little unnecessary, unneeded. What?
Yep.
But when it comes to blockchain, I've always been interested in, because I know this company it is startup in Norway. They are working on making blockchain kind of scalable, affordable, called Nami. And I always, every time we talk, I go, you don't actually, in order to put this solution on the map, given that you've saw one of the biggest challenges there is in blockchain,
Yep.
You need a very cool concept to build for. So it's something that normal people would actually understand.
Yep.
It would educate them on blockchain. They would understand that there's kind of an identity purification of this. But the concept of it needs to be very, very simple. And real estate would be cool.
Yep.
Just kind of tokenizing your own house.
I mean, it's a way to describe how your home is valuable and how you have invested in it, that goes beyond just financial too. I mean, financial is a part of it. Like you can show people on paper, here's what I invested into it, like financially, that's fine. But there's a bigger interest. Like, so when I owned property in Chicago, I did a lot of work to the property, and it's around what I invested, not how much. So, there was something with the foundation and it was seeping, which is normal for limestone, but it made a lot of moisture in the air in the basement. So we built in an internal drain system. I hired a company to do that. We totally rehabbed bathroom and kitchen in the second floor unit. Okay. Letting people know, what was done, who did it, what, like, that the cupboards came from IKEA, like this kind of stuff. If people could see that, and it had like, it's like sort of like a dossier or portfolio on the home. I mean, we came up with this idea when I had the property, because I was like, how cool would that be? Like, selling the property would be so much more fun, because you're sharing like your work and like the effort that you've put into the thing, and it was done with care and love. Like, I wanted this thing to be nice because I had people living there, I was living there. If you can share that and express that to people outside of, I want this much money for it, there's more value to it. And all, like, isn't most purchasing behavioral anyway? Like, it's emotional, like people are doing something based on some felt sense of need, or desire. So yeah, I mean, this will get totally usurped by markets though, where they're trying to sell into people's wants and desires. But maybe people can become more savvy consumers as well, again, because they could see the chain. Like, was it done with love and care? Or did you just get some person who's not licensed to slap everything together, and you bought secondhand cabinets from a place that doesn't have a good track record, and they bought them illegally from wherever. I don't that doesn't make any sense, but yeah. You could probably
cutting back on illegal cabinets.
You could get savvier customers.
Yeah.
Yeah, legal cabinets.
But that's the whole point of blockchain, just owning your own footprint.
Yeah. And responsibility comes back to this again. Like, what is your relationship with what you are consuming and doing? Like, do you know where it comes from? Do you care? And like, if this, it'll be interesting. If some of this stuff is public, you can look at like what people are doing. And I mean, people will not want this to be public, because some people's behaviors, it's going to start looking like societally, people are going to be like, you can't do that. That's not good, which
there's that. And then there's also the competitive advantage thing, or the, so this is the instinct that you've had, Farzad, of operating in public transparently, right? This is just the same mentality, right? Because if you can show lineage of thought and action, and this is what portfolios were. This is why I was like, if you can show that you have the capability of doing this thing, you can get more work, right? This is the thing I was interested in. And now, all media is really easy to produce.
Yep.
You can just send an army of people out and build this stuff. What is harder to produce is the style of thinking and the ability to collaborate and relate and all of these things. And so what are media types that can demonstrate what you are capable of, and what the people around you are doing, right? Like, this relational matrix, if you're going to work with people, is important. What is the depth of talent that's around a person? Who do they put in their heads? What kind of conversations are they having? Is that somebody that I want to interact with? Or are they just on fucking LinkedIn or Twitter all day, like, I'm just fucking trying to collect likes? I don't care about that. It is a negative signal to me now that you are spending all of your time trying to collect shit that is worthless for a company that doesn't give a fuck about you. So, like, what are you building? What are you making in the world? What are you giving back?
Yeah.
Like, this is a positive signal. It's something where you're acting from a place of abundance, right? And so it can go both ways, right? But that's my instinct now.
Yeah, this is an interesting, like, it's the enactment, like you're doing things together, you're making things together instead of just talking about it.
Well, you're showing how it's made.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a script for this. We don't know where we're going to land. And the better we get at this, the more likely we'll get into territory where we're uncomfortable. and we haven't talked about something, and we're having to figure it out in real time. Like, and if somebody can watch you do this and they are sensitive to it because there's value in there. I love watching people do this. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You come at it this way and I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. So what can I learn from a person who can think in a way that I don't?
Yeah.
Right. What is the perspective that you hold on the world, and how did it get there? And if we interact, like, does that create something that wouldn't be able to exist otherwise? So how else are you going to know that that's possible unless, you can see people do the thing that they're good at? So, yeah.
Man, finding like-minded people and just having set times to talk to them is so much better than anything else in terms of personal growth.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. I just kind of realized it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. It's very powerful.
In the time that we have been talking, right? Like over the months or whatever, like consistently.
Yep.
Again, it's training. We are training this.
Yep.
Like
stuff. Yep.
At the beginning of our discussions, like I was struggling with a bunch of stuff, and particularly how I was going to relate to the world, intellectually and through work and whatever, all these things. And you're pushing out in one direction and I'm pushing out in another. And then we started combining this, and Kristen's got, her third thing, and we're all, moving together in this thing. And the stuff that you're doing sort of naturally, like I can see how, like, I could find myself doing something at the scale because I'm able to talk you through and talk with you, like encounter the problem with you. And I can see how I might fit or not fit into that environment. And it produces a view of what is possible in myself that I would not be able to get otherwise. And the only way to do this is to interact in good faith with peers.
Yep.
Like, oh, there is potential here that this person is exercising fluidly because they have been conditioned, or they are, getting after it, or whatever the hell it is. And this, that gives you an aspirational quality. Then it's about like having the resilience and the network to be able to show up for whatever that aspiration is. This is what, and if you do this together, you build together. This is the whole thing. So this is just good team dynamics and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I can't, without it, like, you're by yourself looking at videos online, and that's fine. Like, you can get pretty far with that, but like you'll ratchet up really quickly if you're willing to get into the muck with people. And it's fun. This is, what else is there to do?
Yeah. I like thinking about juxtaposing this with typically how work feels. And there's like some sort of, like, I get these little like pulses where I'm like, yeah, but what if we make something together? What if we build something together that does bring in the market? And so I was just thinking about that as you're talking, and what comes up is, what better of a foundation to have where it's outside of market and it's foundational. Like, how do we relate to each other? How do we see the world? What is the experience? If we don't have to make money together, like having that be like a starting point, and then finding ways that make sense, like the flow of energy, like what's the group flow, like how do we connect, where do we agree with each other, what is it like to have conversations and disagree, that sort of thing, and then let the business opportunity or whatever it is sort of emerge from that. There's like a patience here, and there's a sense that it will come if it's meant to come, and why wouldn't it sort of arise? Like, it seems like that would make sense at some point. So it's interesting. But the market sort of,
but without doubt, in this life, I will build a social platform with Dave, and it's unavoidable. I think it will happen. I think so, because I think that's what I've been bugging him all these years. Tumblr has been my, you know, you have a period in your life, you go, that made a big impact on me, just using this tool. It can be a physical product or digital one.
Yep.
Tumblr had one of the biggest impact on me, of just because of its simplicity and what enabled you to kind of,
Yep.
that was where I found myself, just being able, it gave me the tool and I could express myself. And then the more I used it, the more I understood, all right, I am some kind of a designer.
Yep.
I like to build stuff, and everything in that nature come from Tumblr. Then now we have the ability to make one because there is a need for it, and there is a lack of it too. It just needs to be very small, and perhaps it makes money, perhaps it doesn't make money, but you know, to hell with that, because the money comes from other sources.
Yeah.
This is just something to be happy about. If there is one product that I would actually enjoy the process of, it would be such tool. None of the stuff that I'm doing are that enjoyable during the process because they are directly, it needs to make money.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, we are wasting so much money. But with this is a very enjoyable process. And I think what you guys done with Ponder and all of the experiments that you are running, even now, one day we just suddenly have this little thing on the side
We'll just
that
be
we keep adding things to it.
It's coming.
It's
It's
coming.
just that. So what I think my main task, or the thing that I'm most interested in, is the protocol that runs these things, like the backbone of how the media interacts with each other, and then putting faces on this stuff. Like, here's one that is a Tumblr adjacent version, right? Here's one that is for like small teams of people to work in knowledge stuff, right? But the same underlying principle, the media platform, like the protocol, needs to represent the world that we live in, right? And Tumblr did a decent job of that at the time, but now we've got movement across media and like backlinking and all this other stuff that is how things are going to be working. So I think it needs to represent that. And then you can do a simple snapshot of that type of thing plugged into this larger protocol. Anyways, it's starting to make sense. So yeah. And that protocol is a long project, and it's going to need examples to show that it can work. So this is kind of what we're doing. Like, how do you grow them? How do you do it together too? What is the size of the networks? You know, what is the Goldilocks zone for these kinds of things? I don't know.
You know, the only reason that we haven't done anything together, Dave overthinks stuff.
Yeah,
He does. Like, it's impossible to backward engineer a community.
no, I know. So the way I think, so this is the way I look at it is like preparing the soil so that you can grow these things. Like there's work to do on that front. Like, and you know, we're doing it. You can only do it by enacting it. Like, this is why these experiments and these little small groups and stuff, like these kinds of projects, like what is the type of media that needs to be expressed in the type of Tumblr thing that we're talking about, right? Because there's, for them, you know, it was GIFs and it was like single image posts, and you know, that's mostly what text posts to some degree. And we've moved past that now. Like, AIs can garbage dump these things out now. Like, you can just produce anything that you want. So it can't be that can't be the currency anymore. There has to be a different relationship to the media. And so if you can get your basic media forms down, like, and they should be primitives. If there are primitives, then you can stick them together in an interface, and then you're good. So we're at new primitive stage. This is my thinking. There might be
probably bring Farzad into conversation with CJ at some point here.
Yeah.
We've got a friend who's an engineer who we've been doing these experiments with, and yeah, we're playing with this stuff, but Farzad's perspective would probably be good in, okay, let's just build it like this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's
I'll just
potentially
keep
too
doing
much talk
nonsense.
and then not enough implementation. And then Farzad's good with getting things out the door. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, I've been trying to see
Mine,
yeah.
yeah, mine is I start with the simplest number of tools that is absolutely necessary. I need to write somewhere, I need to click send, very, very basic components. And
Yeah.
then you start with where do we put the constraints? And we just keep switching them until the thing makes sense. But for me, if I'm talking about the same idea more than a few weeks, I go crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. I used to be this way completely. This one, like
he's learning patience.
I got a sniff of how big this thing is. And like I've got to come at it slow. So, but if it is elegant in the way that I think it is, then building like versions of this thing should not be hard. Like the backbone is I'm spending time on that.
It's the foundational thing again.
Yeah. You can't rush the foundation or else it'll fall apart. So
it's funny. It's like Dave.
Really though? No, I wouldn't.
We are experimenting. We're just, it's been slow because we want to do it with a team. Like we're like sort of waiting for everybody, like, and we're in the same place as CJ right now, but then everyone's getting sick and things are happening. So there's an interesting thing with this getting sick, and Dave's been a little under the weather and like slowing down, and the concept of limits we talked about last week where, there is no limit. So yesterday Dave's like, tomorrow I'm going to be 150%. And I was like, let's just slow it down. I was like, let's, and I like went to hug him and he says, Farzad, she's trying to put limits on me. It was really funny. So that becomes our joke now. Whenever anyone's limiting anything, we're like, Farzad wouldn't like it. Don't limit it.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm figuring out a new way of tackling these things. I would like to be able to go fast in the way that you're talking about, and also have it feed back into this bigger picture. So I know that you can't rush this. Like it will snap. Like I have to trust that I'm onto something here, like to the degree that I am. And some of that might be needing a push. So like you being like, let's fucking go is, we'll see. We're getting close.
You know how I'm a very bad shopper. Well, let me rephrase that because I actually take some pride in the process too. I'm very specific when I buy stuff. Sure. Clothes.
Yeah.
At some point, I will probably do something there, but at least making my own clothes. But I go think about things for a very long time, things that I really like, right? And for whatever reason, there is something there. I don't go just buy it.
No.
I need to think about it for just to torture myself, I guess. But then the second thing is I just want to be very sure because I kind of put some kind of my own identity into the thing. Is that does it match me? Is it correct? And I go by, I'm like, fuck, that was wrong. I have so many of those wrong choices. There is a line of shoes here. I just wear only one pair. And I have at least 7 that I bought in the past 2 months, which I thought about, got them, never wore them. And ideas with products are the same way for me. So now for me, it's just, I can't go sit around thinking about something for a long time. And I have 2 ideas like that. That one day when I just need to figure that out, and it will never get done. Unless I'm actually go Lego piece approach and I'm like putting things together and I look at it and I'm like, this looks wrong. I'm just going to go with red pieces this time, build it up. It doesn't work. Put different things. My approach to products always been that way. Yep. And I don't think just from thinking of it, I can come up with the formula that makes it unique. It never happens.
Yeah, you have to do something.
Yeah.
When you do something,
try it on, bring it home. Yeah. Wear it around and you're like, nah, I don't like this.
So like what you're talking about is like figuring out a constraint model. You've figured out a model that works for you, right? So now the design level that I'm at is iterating through constraint models. Is that model work? Does that model work? Does that model work? And I'm writing these out and I'm building mentally with them, right? Because they're at such a scale that I have to virtualize it. I would need huge teams to fuck with this stuff otherwise, right? But I'm doing mental shorthand on like, what is a constraint model and what does it produce? So in your case, you were looking for a right fit with identity and personality, and you have to go across a large swath, and you need to do experimentation. So I did this too with fashion, like, and then I ended up just wearing this all the time because I don't know, because I don't know what to do.
All designers end up in the same place for whatever reason. Everybody go black.
But you know, the cut and the like, you know, it's merino wool, and I get it from these specific manufacturers, and then I like hats from this company in Canada, and it took me a long fucking time to get there. But then I knew what the properties that I personally cared about, right? And if you're journaling, this stuff will bubble up too. You'll be able to like sort of look at this thing, and it's work. It's because you're having to sit in uncertainty for a long time. And what I found with ideas like this one, if they're truly worth it, like they're still worth it. The market doesn't matter, right? Like, because it becomes a natural expression of who I am, like, and who the people around me to work on it are, right? And you can't fake that. You can't rush it. You can manufacture a version of it, but I'm not interested in that right now. I will be interested in that because I like manufacturing things. But for now, I want to know what I want: elegant constraints to operate within that are in alignment with the world, and a system that I can adjust them like as we move along. So like I'm building sensors into the world. It's weird. I don't know. I'm going to start writing about it. It'll make more sense.
Or you guys could talk about it too.
Well, that too.
Because like, it would be nice for you, I think, to explain like the same thing that we're starting to do with CJ, because it's a different type of conversation than this is. It's more of like, how do you build it, right? What does it look like? It's more practical or pragmatic, which, yeah, it's getting down to brass tacks, but playing with it's the same kind of thing in a way where we're playing with ideas, but it's a little bit more functional.
The way that the flows work, the interaction flows work, is different than the way I used to design, like fundamentally different. So thinking about how to put UI on that stuff, like, is probably pretty similar, like, because you're still putting it on a 2D screen.
Yeah.
But the way the engine works is different. It's engineered differently. And so like I'm reading the Dao De Xing and stuff, like all the blockchain and crypto stuff works this way, the Web3 stuff. There is a logic to the way this stuff works that makes it different than Web 2. And so designing in this stuff is different, which we're going to have to test this out. But the thing that I didn't do in the past was I just sensed my way into it and just fucking made shit, right? Which I'm a lot messier than you are. I just make like a catastrophe. And I had to grow up with this some, because the older you get, the bigger mess you can make and the crazier. I don't want to do that shit anymore.
Yeah.
So what I found is you can go look into the fundamental like philosophy of how these technologies are made, because the people who are inventing these technologies are reading this shit, and then it's opening their brains. So I'll go read what they read, and then I'll understand how they came to the same conclusion, right? Or to the degree that makes sense, and then can remix it with the stuff that I've done in the past. This takes longer than I like, but I'm getting better at it, right? I'm getting better at figuring out source text so that like, you know, I'm like, oh, the Dao De Xing, this is what all these people are reading, because this is how the applications work. They're all relational and they have all this stuff. This logic is in place, right? Or you go find this one blog post that somebody wrote 20 years ago, and it just explains how everything is going to work because they've just been working on it. So in that sense, studying these things when you're working on foundational technologies, it can help. But you can over-index on that and just stay in the books forever. So it's a balance between like enacting what you're learning through experimentation, like and continuing to study so that you have a grounding. This is my sense that if I want to work on things that I didn't go to college, so I'm putting myself through a style of college here. I want to understand why these things work the way they do. Like what, and yeah, so I don't know. So yeah, but we should also talk about the actual product at some point. Anyhow.
I think it's good for, I mean, both of you, but
Sure.
I know Dave more just to push on some things to see what happens, like what comes up, what is the reaction to.
Yeah.
And then on Farzad's side, if he's pushing potentially too much or too fast or something for your liking, figuring out
We'll talk about
what
it.
that tension
Yeah,
is, because if you want to build something together, yeah, push on each other, then see what comes of it. And like early days right now where there's no like reason to, like, we don't have to go build something, like
No.
this is a good time to start pushing on it.
Yeah, it's all the I've got like 50 spinning plates, and they're getting closer and closer to actually, like, plates aren't the right metaphor. Just
It's creating a cyclone.
yeah, they're just, I mean, I can feel people and like roles and stuff like this coming together. And it's similar that when you told me about what you're doing, right? You're like, this is over here and that.
Yeah.
I know that this is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I know. And it's at like fucking 30% at best, right? Which is a good time to start pushing it out into the world to see what's going on. But yeah, if I go too soon, I'll get frustrated and like flip out. So it's balancing that stuff, right? So yeah, I don't know.
30% built or decided?
Conceptualized almost.
Yeah.
Like I have my head around it about 30%. Like I'm sure enough that I can go out and like,
yeah,
I can do the newsletter for Rising Enterprises. Like it's enough, you know, or I can create Wayward Group and house everything under that. I know, and like you said, you're like, I don't know exactly like how it's all come together, but enough that I'm willing to stick my neck out this much, just that much.
Yeah. My style is typically I grow a big mess, and then one day it just snaps into place. But I've already known what it was for a while. Like, you know, you have a similar thing, right?
Yeah.
But a big part of this is finding the right people to help express what I'm missing. And if I go too soon, the thing is too disperse, and the level of vulnerability in not being understood on something that large is really fucking uncomfortable to the degree that I'll stop doing it. So it's about finding the right, and I'm learning in myself to okay, like, if it makes sense, we'll do the thing, right? It's, again, I don't know where that balance is. And yeah, I don't know. We're close.
I'm different though with this. Approach wise, we are different, but luckily both of us run an agency, so we know how to communicate to adapt to the client's, you know, preferences. So we speak their language, and then I see that we probably would do it the same. But I'm very singular when I approach projects. I just go find the person, not the group. I just find the person that can move this forward just a little bit. And if it still makes sense after a few months, then all right, one more.
Give them, well, and like you did too with William, like bring on for a period of time, see how it goes. Like, can that keep growing? Can the responsibility, can his involvement evolve over time? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's incremental.
And with OFC, when it comes to products, our maximum is 3 months, and it's always been. Like roadmaps MVP was 3 months, regardless of what the idea or vision was. 3 months, let's just feel it. And that's the budget required to get a feeling for it, because design, I've come to realize, it means nothing. As soon as you start feeling it, it just doesn't feel right. Prototypes, even for me, are not doing the cut anymore. I don't believe in MVP approach anymore, because it kind of makes you to make it kind of delays the wrong decisions.
Interesting. Say more about that. The wrong decisions. Delaying.
Because in your mind, well, it doesn't work now. Perhaps it does a little bit of what it's supposed to do, but then once it becomes V1, then it actually gonna do the thing.
You're pushing out. That you need to figure out.
And that V1 gets future creep.
Yep.
You're like, well, it can do this as well, because it's just a very, it's not a real thing. It's just a mental image of what you think the V1 is going to be. And then you, as you are progressing towards that direction, the feedback kind of pushes you away from it. And then now you are all messed up building a product that other people want, but you didn't necessarily want it to build.
Yep.
But I don't know. I felt like we were talking about a community chat app, but then this thing sounds a little bit very, oh, this thing sounds complex. If you are going to, is it complex? It's a little bit complex.
Yeah, well, I
No?
mean, it's elegant, I hope. Like, I think it's just it is the paths of communication are just, there are, it's less like bucketed in the same way that things have been, that like, you know, you have a list of stuff, everything's a, you know, still lists or whatever, but they interconnect in ways. And so there's a creation layer and a curation layer. So, and these are important so that you can move across larger swaths of information and sort of get different views of the same kind of thing. So like you have audio, you have video, you have text that all may represent a similar idea.
Yep.
And you need to be able to move through these things, right? So say for instance, Kristen was making notes on this and we're recording it. And then there is relational data that the three of us were in this and we all have profiles. And then those profiles like connect in some way to a larger picture, right? So these patterns I need your help with on how to encode them. But what I'm trying to do is get this model locked in so that I can start writing these paths and they start making sense. And then we're playing these games to prove out how they work, right? And so ultimately it's going to look very simple. It has to be, or else people won't be able to use it.
Yeah.
But like, so you need on-ramps for the media, you need the interrelationships between these things. And then there is a layer that needs to be expressed for the relationship between all of these objects. And all of the objects, the relationships are also objects. They are things.
Yep.
So what is that? Like, and where, like, how do you express that?
Yep.
It's about movement through information. It's not a landing page and a list of stuff that you click into and then you come back out and stuff. You are just moving constantly through the information, right? It's more like a wiki. It's more, you know, algorithms are doing a lot of this stuff on YouTube and stuff. But
so it's quality over quantity
depth.
too. Yeah. So
Depth.
there's like one of the example I was thinking of is, let's say we record this and we put it on a site, but we have a group of not just 3, there's 5 of us, and someone else comes in that wasn't part of this. They take notes on it and they post it. And so then someone that doesn't want to watch the whole video, they can scan through. And then someone else is like, oh, these notes sort of align with this article I wrote. So the curation and creation, like there's like an intermixing here too, where you're playing with each other's content to curate, which that allows for sense making and finding novel patterns in relationships.
There's the complex high fidelity version of this that like the military is probably using. And then there is the simple media game Tumblr version where lots of people can play and it's not a lot of overhead, but you get the basic.
It's a mimetic. Yeah.
So it has layers of fidelity to it. And so if the protocol works, if the basic backbone of the thing works, then it should work across that entire range. Then it's about finding the right niches. And this is doing small scale experiments to play within this type of technology. And each one of these experiments should build the tech. Like, and then you have, because you need the engineering to run this thing. And I also have an ethos that I don't know that this thing should be privately owned. You know, where's the storage on this? I don't want to like maintain people's data. It's a fucking nightmare to do this. Like that is one of the hugest problems that we had at Carbon Made. Like how can you make it so that it's, you can run it with a tiny team and you know, like people can get a lot of benefit out of it. They can fork it, they can go do their own version, but without the problems of like open source. So we have to do experiments on this stuff, but there is an ethos to this because if we're going to be running this thing for a while, I would like it to be efficient in some way. So in certain ways, but this is what we have to talk about. I haven't been
Yeah.
ready to talk about this yet because it hasn't felt real enough. This is the first time I'm like saying this out loud, I guess, kind of. So I'm still uncomfortable with it,
That probably means it's a good time.
probably.
Thought network. Then a couple of things popped up. You know how you are tagging a person on Instagram when once you're actually with each other?
Yep.
Yeah.
In this thing, it would just be mentally.
Yeah.
So you are actually writing something, tagging somebody, and then it shows up on their stuff.
Yep.
And then it just keeps evolving between the two of you until the network kind of expands. And
Yep.
you put something there and then probably hoping for something much bigger come out of it by people cloning your thoughts or forking your thoughts. It's just GitHub for thoughts.
Tumblr too work this way, right? The
Yeah.
chains, these kinds of things. I think the big thing here is
Yeah, the depth is different.
the profiles in this, we're calling them persons, are made up of personas, like we've been talking about. And you
Nice.
can grow little personas. So like
You talked about this in the beginning, like if you were amateur animator, but an expert photographer, all of these people are part of your person, and you can show like your growth along these tracks in some way. And it's, yeah, so why? Like, what's the benefit of that? It's so that you can help grow yourself holistically. Like, what's the...
You need to be able to see how these things are interacting.
Yep.
Right? Like, so say I'm starting a photography practice and I'm starting a writing practice, and these things are hanging together somehow.
Yep.
They're going to pull on each other.
It's
right?
like me learning to edit audio and how that helped the mental model of editing photos. Like,
yeah.
Yep.
Anyhow.
It can be a list though. It needs to be a mind map format.
Yeah. So how do you navigate? This is this, that,
Yeah.
there. We have to figure that's the,
well,
yes.
And the mind map format changes depending on what the like focus is kind of what's hard. Cause like if...
But it can, yeah. I mean, whatever direction the thought goes. So you are the owner of the thought. You had it. And then it start kind of branching out. People take variations of it or writing about it or whatever, however we want to develop a thought process. And if it's a mind map format, the most popular thought line gets the most posts.
So it's encoding these in a way that is navigable for people, like, so that it's not a gigantic mess.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, because I haven't, there's a bunch of...
Well, this is where constraint design comes in.
Yeah.
How, like, so what we're used to is show me the, like, the post or the thing. I like, here's my filter, but we need to like add a level to that or a layer to that where it's like within these constraints.
Sure. That's the curation part of this. There's an entire layer of reader version of this that basically allows you to tinker with the thing. You can build your own algorithms on the fly to get different views of, and they'll probably come back as streams mostly.
You do start with a chat app though, effectively. Yeah. You start like, this is what we're doing. We're doing these little posts, like we're doing this one where everyone's going to read the same newsletter.
Yeah.
You're going to write something, you're going to post it to the same place. And then we're going to come talk about it and we'll record that. And then you see what comes up, because if you don't enact it, like you're saying, Farzad, you got to go, like, you got to try it. You're not going to know. You got to feel like what doesn't feel right. What do we like about this? What do we want to do with this data now that we have it?
Yeah. We have to go make messes of content, right? Of different types of content to see, what they're going to be. So, yeah.
Did we talk about this before? A little bit deja vu in terms of
maybe
group therapy. This is the beginning of the ponder conversations we had.
Maybe.
I think
I've been on the hunt for this thing since Carbon made. So yeah.
Yeah, and when you talked about ponder, I got the same thing that I'm getting now again, which is you are basically making your, because I think the common obsession here is thought patterns and in discovering what those are at a personal level. like each of us, how we connect things.
Yeah.
And then how we think we are connecting things, somebody else comes and look at it, they find other traces, other ways that they are connected. And once they're like, actually this goes with this and this, and there is a group of this right there. So it's group therapy. And I thought that was basically ponder.
There's an element of it, yeah, that is
Yeah.
therapeutic. There's the part of it is that collapsing the distance between thought and expression of thought in as close as you can get, because and there's the way you do that is triangulate. Like, here's me talking about it, here's me creating something, like with audio or video, like whatever it is, because the closer we can get to expressing what's going on inside, like that machinery, the closer we can get to each other and seeing, you know, I don't know, this is where I can get really woo and like spiritual, that we are all one. So how do we sort of vibe on that? Because once you can sort of see like that what I'm experiencing and how I'm experiencing it, you're also experiencing it in your own way. And then once you get on the same page, you can do whatever you want in this world, because like you've got sensors out in all kinds of different ways, because we all have different sensors. And if we are working together, what do you want to do? Let's do it. You just do it. It becomes easy because it's not just one, it's many.
This is where you don't
communicate.
You don't need voting. You just need to be communicating all the time, right? In very particular ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think basically thought patterns are barcode for people.
Yeah.
If the more our thought patterns, and I think that's what we have here, we have a kind of a same form of, we connect same things with each other.
Yeah.
That's not as common with other people.
Yeah.
And that's why we can discuss most things fluently. It flows. So you know how I mean, if we can get people to drop initial stuff and then other people can get in and do some things with their thoughts.
Yeah.
But MVP of this, if it's chat or if it's another thing, the idea doesn't come through. So the feedback is not the right feedback, because that's not. So it whatever the format of this is, it should be that from the beginning. So it grows towards the right direction, because it can also be a chat thing, or it can also be a list thing. But then if the starting point is that, then you're gonna move towards whatever that is. So it's better starting point to be as weird as possible for it to gain its name as this is a new thing. This is not.
This is why I want to grow this thing from like the most base component parts, like the repository that we have, that buzzard.life site. We are just putting like markdown files in there. And if you have an audio file, you can drop that. We're just going to take primitives that already work. We don't need to re-engineer all that shit, right? It's a video, it connects to this. Then we can start doing the tendons. We start linking them together and start finding those paths. And the way to get this going, because the most important part of this that's missing is the starting from zero. There's also you have to form relationships in the process of doing this stuff.
Yep.
It is all relational, which means that you get a group together, they agree to do a game or something, and then they come and do it. And then the game is encoded in the process of doing it, right? And those are simple relationships that are being expressed now, like a tag, right? 4 of us produced a post under this tag. There's a collection of these things, right? And that, you can add another event within that collection. Then you start building out the thing. It'll show itself. But getting the primitives right and getting the early organization of people and the ethos behind how you're doing it will produce better or worse relationship data, right? So doing these conversations, getting into flow together in a high fidelity way is the start of this. And then you start to see if you can move it across different medias. Then you need to represent those medias in an interface. And some of those medias may be chat. We're using shit off Telegram, fucking YouTube, this. We don't need to make all this stuff. We can just use what's on the ground in front of us, and then use the ability for us to interact and collaborate. And then we encode that, whatever that is, the ethos, the rules, the principles that make something like this possible. Then we go try it on somebody else, right? We invite people who don't know anything about any of this. And if it works, it works. And then we'll learn some more from the blind tests, But part of this is understanding how it works is part of the game. Like, because the better you understand it, the more you can learn how to play the game, the better the gameplay, right? It's educational in this sense. Like, it's not just showing up and watching stupid TV or fucking consuming shit all the time. It's participatory, because relationship is participatory. You have to show up and you have to fucking play. Like, if you don't, you can't sit on the sidelines, because the gameplay won't be fun, right? Which means that the invitation to play is embedded in the protocol, right? So, yeah. Something like that.
Why there are no journaling app that is mind mapped based?
You found
there is. So our friend Satya, who is building Antar, it's a chat to yourself journaling app. Solo player right now. He shows things in mind map.
Yeah.
Still early stages. I don't know. It's not out iOS yet. I don't know. You're iOS.
It's a test flight. Yeah. It's the first one, and we've been talking to him, and he followed Ponder's progress. So
yeah, I
mean, you have Roam Research.
Yeah, which people use mind mapping tools for journaling, but okay, I'll tell you why, because I've done this. It's because it's idiosyncratic.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna do that, but you want to share it with someone, you like share it, and you have to walk them through what is going on.
Yeah.
So doing a group journaling mind map makes more sense, because then you understand, because you all know how to navigate it. Otherwise, you're creating primitives that you are the only person that can understand. So journaling is fine, probably, but if you want to share it and you want to use it for connection, I think that's where it gets more complicated.
I mean, yeah. I mean, journaling should be grouped, just because how you view yourself is not the reality of who you are. Usually, that's really messed up.
See all angles of yourself.
Yeah. So the sooner you come to peace with the image of what other people have of you, and then try to align what you think who you are and what they think you are, and then align that's where I guess you find internal peace. And that's through kind of mind mapping, and then other people come adding their threads of thought or perception of things into yours, and then slowly things get more. And that's what we are doing with therapy too. Therapists, with telling the one side of the story, they have a good understanding of who we are, how we acted in the past based on the stories that we've told. And then they put, all right, these things on top of your mind map or thoughts, and then there you are, you feel a bit more calmer and you understand yourself a bit more. We should do the design of this live. I mean, in a recording. Just starting sketching ideas.
Just play with it.
Yeah, I mean,
play with it, see what happens. And
I think that CJ should be involved.
I agree,
because he has the engineering picture of this, and we're doing translation, and the engineering is going to push the design on this, like, back and forth, because there are natural limits to what we can do. What we can actually build that can scale without it blowing up, because the amount of data that gets produced in these kinds of things, we're going to need to find where the natural limits are, and then design elegant solutions around natural limits. So having an engineer who can actually build anything talk about this is really important. because if we design it, again, though, like, I don't know. So I think that this has been my,
It might not be so much about the constraints of engineering as much as it is
patterning.
well,
Yeah.
just group, like
Yeah.
do it with a group without it getting too big. So it's again subsidiarity. Like what's the smallest? I mean, the smallest group is you could just do it together, but are you missing something potentially? Like I feel like CJ rounds something out.
Yeah. Like when I talk to him, I get a whole another layer of how this works.
It's not technological constraint. It's just the engineering mindset. Like he brings that to the table.
That's technological constraint. Like things work or they don't work. You can engineer stuff or not. I mean, like, yes, but
I'm going to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So I think we should all have a conversation and then get a feel for that to start. And then part of that may be we just go in and we get into Figma and we start dicking around or something, right? Yeah, where I'm like right now, what it seems to be is that like we need to just warm up. CJ picks things up like rapidly. Like he'll just okay, and then we're working together. So he's like us this way. Yeah, because I kind of don't have I have this thing abstracted. Like I can see how the relationships work together, but like you're far warmer on design than I am. Like I haven't been making interfaces. I've been unloading how I think about making interfaces as much as possible because all of these like prior assumptions were fucking me up. Like I kept trying to make it the old way and it breaks. It doesn't work.
What a cool notification to get. This person mentioned you in their thoughts or something like that. I don't know where it came.
I'm having this experience now because we're having phone calls with John and CJ, and we're talking about this thing. We're doing it as we're talking about it, right? So that's an interesting experience. Like this is what it feels like to move between these things, and this one works and that one doesn't, and whatever. And then they make notes like in real time, and then we share our notes, and it's like Dave said this, and I'm like, did I? Oh, that interesting. I'm thinking about it like this. And and then it's like Dave, Kristen, and you're able to go look at the sort of record through somebody else's processing. It's not a transcript. I don't need a fucking transcript of what I said. I need the relationship of how people are interacting with what I said. Like just printing out the text is fine. Like, but then you just have lots and lots and lots of text. It's about context. It's about interrelationship. It's about like what was formed and how it was seen, it's about the process. And so all of these things are just process notes, right? And you are just processing that stuff into something else. If a conclusion shows up, that's great, but that's not the point. It's about clarity and about like finding channels of movement that are more in alignment with the world, right? There's no destination. The point is to keep doing this. You may have milestones though, and then you celebrate those. That's the next step.
It's a tool for thought. There are a bunch of new cool things made possible with iPad and devices like that makes it easy to zoom into a thought and then zoom out, but then all of them are mood oriented.
Yeah.
Which is exactly how the mind works. But then they are without the connections. Like nothing connects to each other. It's just a mayhem of a bunch of cloudy thoughts and things that there you go. Now you have one more thing to do, connect these things. Yeah. But if it's more connection based and there is a purpose with each net, with each kind of mind map, then it gets some sort of a constraint to not go be all about everything. But then what a beautiful thing if each person have one spider web of thoughts. It's just one. Anyway, now it's just too specific.
This is, so this is where, I come out of the model and I'm like, all right, then you can kind of see how it's like flows and works together, right? And there is some visualization of this that is interactable, and better and worse interactions. It's going to be looking at things over time, moving through information in certain ways, and using patterns that people already know where possible, because creating new fucking shit is too hard. Like, you need Apple's R&D budget to try and actually do that. So pull chef off the shelf and recombine it in ways that are innovative, right? Like that people haven't done before. Keep it cheap. And in the meantime, we just build lo-fi with stuff that's cheap, right? That's we're building with salvage, with stuff that's around, right? And then this makes it, this is a good constraint, so that like we don't go try to hire a bunch of fucking, we do it. We know how to do this. Make the thing yourself. Because if you make it, you encode it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, you'll know in your fucking body. Yeah. So this is part of the design thing. This is, for me, I need to do this again. Like, I need to be able to feel through it. And then what role do I play in this? And how can I be of use? And part of it is showing up and participating. Yep. That is the main and first focus.
Yep.
So
this is how I like to work, generally speaking. I like to do things, like, even when I know I have the future of a staff, or I have a staff.
Yeah.
Still going to do the exact same things that they're doing, so I can understand, because otherwise we're back to where we started.
Yeah.
Where you've got managers or executives telling you to do things and you're like, you don't understand how it works. So you have to, it goes both ways. So again, you can understand, like, you empathize, because you're like, I know how to do that. I did it. So if I'm going to speak to it on a different level or a different perspective, it's always with the enacted sort of mindset as a backbone.
I feel like any key things you kind of need to do it yourself until you know what needs to be delegated. But I always admired people that just, nope, that's not even my forte. I'm just gonna delegate it right from the get-go. I'm not gonna even touch on it. But then how do you know you are providing the right feedback, and if the things are even on the right track or not, or what could be? You cannot advise in any way. You need to now go figure everything on your own.
This is where, like, having a peer makes sense, where you're like, I don't understand this. Can you come on board and help do it, but teach me as you're doing it? And then eventually you can grow into, and you might not be the one that does it. Like, I mean, with like engineering, I understand enough engineering that I like to know how it works. And if I can understand it on some level, but am I ever going to be able to program at the level of like CJ? No, there's no way. I mean, maybe it would take a lifetime, but is that an efficient use of my time? Probably not. But I do want to understand what he, like, when he's like, it doesn't work this way, here's why. Okay, teach me again. Like, I'm not following. It's like this and oh, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you get peer versus someone that's just like, don't worry about it, I'll just take care of it. And you're like, okay, you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, it's the what is the grammar of the system? Like, we are learning a grammar together. We are creating that grammar together. And there is a way that we do things, and that way is participatory, like it is enacted. And so if it is not that, then that's not how we do things. If you are tossing it over to somebody in hopes that it'll get done, like, how are you going to work with that person? What does that look like? How do you contribute? Part of this is you write it down, you make a note, and it's out there. And then somebody can pick it up and run with it if they're interested, right? But nobody can be coerced in this system, or the system doesn't work, right? Like, it is a voluntary, it is an interest-based system. Like, you are coming together to work on something because the overall thing feels good to work on, right? And nobody can be like, hey, go work on this. Because, I mean, that's not how peers work, right? Can you help me with this? Or offer invitations for, by expressing what you have in your head, so that somebody else can pick up the baton because they're the right person to do it, because it's there as an invitation, right? And so, but yeah, you have to cultivate this environment. And there are a lot of like, this is back to our games and our experiments and stuff like this. And everybody comes into it as a peer until there's some other reason to do it otherwise. That's what I
Two
got.
things. One, it's really talking with engineers, even when they are explaining the um, why this works and why this doesn't. It limits founders so much. I had conversations with Griffith in the beginning of roadmap, and I go basic future stuff. Well, I would like to drag this timeline from both ends.
Yeah.
One is possible, the other one is not because of the library that we are using. And then what does that mean? And then you try to understand a lot of it, but a lot of it is directly connected to that person.
Oh yeah.
It's not what engineering is, it's what their capability of.
Yep.
Yeah. So you also need to make side notes of this along the line of when you're talking. And then the second thing, we are coming back to like what we talked about with healthcare that go rate your pain from 1 to 10.
Yep.
This is the same thing. You're just sharing your thought patterns, and then you ask people that you trust, people that know you, to tell me what you see.
Yep.
And their findings speed up therapy by a lot. Because if we give you a framework where you can share your thoughts in a meaningful way, that you kind of come to realize your own how you connect stuff together, and then if it's easily shared by people, two people that you trust, and then they put their side to it, 2 3 people, you got your life figured out. And the problem is that most people don't get to that point to share what we are sharing on these calls.
Yep.
But if we can actually design a tool for it that encourages people to share these thoughts, regardless of how vulnerable it might make you look, the outcome will definitely exceed the expectations.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you can make this fun. Like,
this is very fun way of self-learning by people. You're not alone. Journaling alone is not as helpful, because sometimes you don't even go back to read them. And there needs to be some kind of a progress, and the only reason that you are doing it is just to figure things out. But then you are built to just think one way. It's impossible for you to make some other connections, which you only get through getting very close to people and start looking at yourself through their lens.
yeah.
And then, oh my God, is that the person I am? Like, I got that the other day. I was talking to M, and I tend to ask people, how do you see me? When I was in my downtime. Then every time I get the answer to that question, it kind of surprises. Some things I'm like, yeah, all right. But then that's just a part of me that I kind of bring forward depending on who I'm meeting. But then let's see how deep they got into how they look at me, how they know me, how they see. And every time that those answers are so self-awareing, that it teaches you so much about yourself that you couldn't do on your own by journaling. And this is what group mapping, probably whatever the group mapping, probably going to help you figure that out.
The individual journaling can only take you so far.
Yep.
But it helps you sort of habituate the process of being vulnerable, because it's like the smallest like sample size. Because like if you can hide from your own self and it helps you sort of get out of your own way. But then once you're out of your own way, you like, okay, but there's things that you can't see, so bring other people in.
Yeah, this is like exercising. You can exercise as a team, but you need to be fit by yourself. Like, if you're not fit enough, you're only as strong as the individuals in the team, right? And the way that they hang together. So it's working both. Like, you have your individual set of practices, right? And then you can talk about what everybody is doing. And if somebody is like, how are you getting this clarity? usually they have some practice that they've been doing for a long time. And then this has been my approach. Like, you see these people who operate on these different levels, and luckily, like, a lot of them are talking about what they're doing now, right? Philosophers in particular, and cognitive scientists and these types of folks. And they're doing a fair amount of work, like, on themselves and in collective practice, and because they feed on each other. And you're like, you get one of those, like, looks from outside, and then you come back to your practice, and it just unlocks all this stuff. And you won't have time to tell everybody about all that stuff, because when you get these insights, there's a cascade of crazy shit across your entire sort of system. And so I start writing this stuff out, and I'm making notes or whatever. And then you embed it and you practice it, and you go talk, with this new perspective. Right. But yeah, it's the interplay between the group and solo practice. And publishing too, putting it out to a broader audience, like a broader group of collaborators, not an audience necessarily. People who are interested in this same kind of thing, like doing these same kinds of practices.
No one else is going to listen to a 3-hour conversation.
I listen to them all the fucking time.
But because you're working with it, like, you're not going to go to be entertained. Like,
no,
it's not entertaining, right? It's there's something different here. It's not audience where you're sitting as a spectator. You're working through something with them.
Because if something Farzad says or you say or something like that challenges you, you need to be there for that challenge. Like, and then you go back and replay. You're like, what the fuck is he saying there? Because there is something that he knows that I don't know.
Yep.
Right. And I love that stuff. Like, how is that being framed? I have never thought that you could think that way. And so when these are the aspirational things, like, oh, the mind is so much more wonderful than the simple version that I possess right now. So anyways, all right.
Yeah.
I got to eat food soon here.
So as a next thing, we could either do the next one for visualizing some of these things that we talked about, or we can get it off air and book another session for it.
Oh, yeah.
I think that we should all do a game together, like one of these things, and then potentially, like, potentially habituate, some sort of group journaling thing. Like, even if it's one post a week or something, let's start there with the practices.
Or not even one.
Whatever.
Okay, one post a week, whatever the post is, one game a week or something.
Yeah.
And we come up with the game at the end of the session. This is what we've been doing with John and CJ.
Yeah.
But we're not doing it as regularly. So
I think that we can start moving that into more regular.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, like, this is just an aside, like, does Farzad join that team, or do they join this? Like, what, like,
yeah, I don't know. Like,
that's just something I'm thinking about. Cause, like, and then, like, we have got a friend, Jason, that we're doing this with too.
Yeah.
So when do you, like, does everyone come together sometimes? Like, I don't know. So at some point that would be fun, but for now, yeah, let's just.
The first step is, like, I'd like you to meet CJ, and I'd like us to talk together. And so that, and that may be, you can come if you want, like.
Yeah, I'll probably hang out. CJ's sick right now, so I'll help keep that on the radar.
However that works. Yeah.
He's hungry for this too. The last time after we hung out, Dave like went to the bathroom or was in another room, and he's just like, I think we got something here. And he's got that look in his eyes like you just got, where he's like, something's happening. And you're like, yeah, you can feel it a little bit, because people are, what's happening is that we're starting to understand each other, and we can talk in a way that is like that you can't get to on your own.
No.
So even if that's all that comes of this, it's exciting. But the people that you have in the room build software and make things. So then it's like, well, yeah, we're going to make something. We don't know what it is. And yeah, that feeling of potential, it's so nice.
Potential with the possibility of actualization, not just latent potential. Like,
yes.
But yeah, so
anyway,
I think that that's the piece that I'm missing here. to move into to
Actualized.
design or like painting, basically. Because I'd like to hear him talk to you.
So you can see it. Yep.
There's something there that I don't have yet. And then watching you work with him will help me understand what you're seeing. Because if we go do it, like, I'm interested in doing that. I think it'd be fun, but I want the engine, the separate, you are a better designer than I am at that stuff, which means that I will be able to see you work potentially how it'll be good. So I think that's a good next step. And then from there, we may just start making things. I don't know yet. So
that's a good point, because Farzad's sharper with Figma right now, like in real time. So
by a long
that
stretch
would be really interesting. And I personally would just like to see that in action. He's just not as warm, I think.
No, I haven't opened the damn thing in 6 months.
I would hazard a guess that Dave's stronger in the design of like the engine stuff, because he's been studying like these systems that he's pulling from. They're like fundamental systems, but this is good. Stick it all together and you've got.
It's just another enacted example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like if you get to work with CJ, I get to see you guys relate, and then I can take a step back, and then the same thing. You get to see me work with somebody like CJ, and then we can start getting a holographic view of what we're capable of.
Group thing. Yep.
So
what's our game going to be for this week?
Yeah, how are we doing this? We have the buzzard thing. Do you want to do this on waste.space and like have like posting on there, or?
I don't know what the format of the games are even.
Yeah, I mean, what we've been doing is mostly
some sort of like written or a photo or.
Yeah, we've been kind of doing like, we did a synchronicity game. Like we can all do that, and sort of like that first game was basically like pick a random time that gets triggered on a day, and then all three of us post a picture and a piece of text that goes with that picture. Then the text can be whatever it is. And then we have like an orientation point. That's the first game we played with the other guys.
Just really simple. It's like Instagram, but just
in a small group.
Yeah, and with a little bit longer of like, it's like a story or a write-up of like whatever perspective you want to take on what's going on in the photo.
Probably more an internal impression, or like I wrote a stream of consciousness thing of like what was bouncing around in my head, and it may have made sense or it may not have, but it's a snapshot of what the hell's going on, right? So we can do that.
We do that internally. We have a Slack channel called Snap. It's just basically people drop a picture and with the text that goes along with it. It can be a picture of a bag of chips or whatever.
Yeah.
But it goes very long way to just building relationship remotely with people.
Yeah.
All right. So a fixed time, a picture, and a text.
Yeah, Kristen. So we were doing a random time.
I set like a little randomizer alarm thing. So we pick like a time period,
a time range.
Yeah.
So that you don't know when it's coming, so that there's a spontaneity to it, and then it's a group spontaneity. So like it's like an alignment of time in a temporal sense. That's the game part of it, I think, that's interesting. So Kristen will have the thing trigger, and then we can all. And then you can write it if you're not around a computer or something like this, but we can do this in Telegram. We just make the posts in Telegram for now, I think. So she'll send out the prompt on Telegram. We just need to figure out a good time range. I don't know.
Probably sometime. I'll look at our time zones and we'll come up with something.
We don't have to work it out here, but I don't know. We'll see what it feels like. So we did this with the other guys. It was really interesting. I'm curious, since we've already been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
It's a different.
Yeah, it will be different.
So we'll get a good sort of feel on it. And then from that, like these types of games, I think we can start thinking about other ones that work like this. But they're about collapsing distances in a way that produces depth. is the ideal. Like, but yeah, I don't know. Cool.
That's cool. Cool.
We're on our way.
Yeah, Telegram is probably a good space for this.
Yeah, it's got all the multimedia stuff and it works. We're all on it.
If we want to post it somewhere later, we can.
Yeah.
And there's no barrier to doing it.
No.
It's already set up.
Yeah, the reason that we were kind of doing the build stuff with CJ and John is because they're both engineers, and I like playing in the code to the degree that I can.
Nice.
Just because I'm used to it. Because I like knowing I want to know where the frictions are and what I'm missing as far as what's possible technologically. So Jason and I just used to do this. So I habituated it early days. But yeah.
Nice. Me, I just went to HTML and CSS and a little bit JavaScript, and nope, this is not what I want to do. I need to specialize, and then went design only, and then just started hiring engineers and let that thing go.
Which
it
is
was
why
so
you're
good
better at design than I am.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not that. It's just bugs can
It's an
drive me.
aspect of design.
Yeah, the tool part of it, like
yeah.
But yeah, anyways, we'll figure it out. A bunch of like half-cocked, barely able people who are aligned on something can make crazy stuff. So if that's what we are, good.
Half-cocked.
We're definitely good note to end on.
Yeah. Farzad, you need to go to sleep.
Yeah.
How many hours of sleep do you get a night?
A lot. I'm not gonna lie. I get 12, 11.
Really?
You're amazing.
8 for me. Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything to wake up to. I mean, I don't have a schedule like that.
Right.
Good or bad, but it's my life. I really know, even sometimes I go, it would be very nice tomorrow to wake up early and work and do other things. But I know I'm just gonna have a shitty day if I just have 6 hours of sleep. So that's not negotiable. I just get my
whatever
good
works.
10, 11, yeah, 10 hours. 10 hours.
I'm
9.
surprised. So when you are up, you're just like go, go, go.
Yes. I'm constantly working.
Yeah.
When I'm up, and when I sleep long.
It's a good policy.
That's.
I don't sleep long. Then I loaf around all the time thinking. So.
Yeah, thinking deeply though, like it's exhausting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, I sleep deep.
Good.
All right.
I look like a zombie most of the time. I'm not sure why.
No,
I need some color. I'm very white. I'm like crazy white. I'm almost transparent.
I am transparent.
Translucent.
You can see my veins.
It's like one of those shrimps that's in a cave.
You can literally see my veins. A shrimp in a cave?
Yeah. They never see the daylight. So they're translucent. All right, we're going.
We're going to go, but I want to look up how Telegram makes money. And I'll share it with you guys.
Okay.
Nice.
Because I don't pay anything and I'm using it for a bunch of shit. But Dave was saying that he thinks there's like whole businesses built on
They
top
got
of
marketplaces.
it.
They got all kinds of crazy shit in there. They got like 1 billion users or something.
Well, I was like, do they sell a bunch of stickers? Is like my this is why I started thinking about it, because you were talking about that Farzad, like boom.
Line.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Like,
who knew that sticker is gonna be one of the biggest revenue sources for Line? They do everything. They do food delivery, everything is in it. It's so Asian to have Southeast Asian startups to just make one app and make it do everything.
Yeah.
And it does everything, but then the biggest source of income is stickers.
Really, in Line?
It's crazy.
Interesting. How funny.
So there you go.
It's very crazy.
Bye.
All right.
Later.
Bye.
Till next time.